Okay, so what I'm going to present is essentially from specifically the BioProducts Cluster side and BIC's role in it. Now, some of the information in here is still very tentative. As Lynn mentioned, there's some details that are not set in stone yet. So some of the ratios and the dates may change as these details come out, but for now, this is what we know and what we're working towards. First, a brief note about Bioindustrial Innovation Canada. Our mission statement is to provide critical strategic investment, advice, and services to business developers of clean, green, and sustainable technologies. And our vision statement is to create jobs and economic value sustainably for Canada. Where does the BioProducts Cluster come into this? It serves as an entry point into that development pipeline. So that's really important for us, really important for the projects, and it just helps us be able to manage the projects forward through research and towards further commercialization activities. In a general cluster overview about how this works, and this is how the current cluster works and how we envision the next framework to work. Pre-commercial projects, so all the projects within the cluster are essentially split into two groups. There are those that are essentially with industry or academia or collaborations between both, and projects that are collaborations with AAFC centers. One example being Dr. Quee's work with Envirobond. In the cluster, Bioindustrial Innovation Canada takes the role of managing those activities and progressing them forward, progressing the research forward according to plan, with an eye towards eventual commercialization or integration into a value chain. From there, Bioindustrial Innovation Canada has other tools available, such as our ComSci funding program and SCA. There's a couple examples of projects that have gone through this pipeline. One example being the Cellulosic Sugar Producers Co-op and the work that Charles Alon did there, as well as Ecosynthetics and Peter starting out with the Durabine project in the BioProducts AgSci Cluster, developing it through. Now it's at a point where it needs that assistance to overcome barriers to commercialization, and that's where we can help. So looking towards the next cluster, and I'm echoing some of the same words that Lynn has said. The current framework is winding down, although not finished quite yet. The current framework ends at the end of March next year. Project successes within this framework have and will continue to be, where possible, integrated into that development pipeline. Again, example, the cellulosic sugar work and Durabine. But we are looking to build the successes that we have had in the current cluster, the lessons that we've learned, and carry that momentum going forward and into the next 5-year framework. So we fully intend to be submitting a cluster proposal for the next framework under another BioProducts cluster. Within the cluster, we foresee the following, the projects being grouped into the following themes. First being bioproducts or co-products. This is things like biochemicals, intermediates, biofuels and bioenergy, fairly self-explanatory. Supply to bioproducts, these can be things like biomass aggregation, feedstocks, logistics. The Cord Stover study is one example, but when you're talking about new energy crops, things like miscanthus switchgrass, that's another place where that can fit in. Biomaterials and biocomposites, the work of Dr. Yan, Dr. Pham's group, looking at biocomposites or biopolymers. In this group, we also include biochar and bio-based soil amendments. I know there is a lot of work going on in that field, or potential work that could be going on in that field. We want to support that. And the last group being biopesticides. And out of no matter what column the project or potential project falls into, the main aspect that the project has to have is that it's a clean technology, product, process, system, or practice that provides sustainable alternate markets and improves economic productivity and potential for Canadian agriculture. There has to be a benefit to Canadian agriculture from the project. So what have we done so far, and what are we doing so far for the next framework? Call for proposal has gone out, went out shortly into the new year. Deadline for it right now is the end of March. And what I am looking for from these proposals is not so much a full proposal, but something closer to an LOI, a letter of intent, with a few additional details, primarily as long as the two-pager has background and technical data that we can read it and understand what it is that you're proposing to do, what the market and commercialization opportunity and potential of the project is. As I said, we're trying to focus on commercializing these technologies. So if there is a clear path there, we want to make sure that it's highlighted. What your estimated timeline to market is for the product or process, whatever the subject of the project is, and the projection of funding that is required over the 5 years. Right now, as Lynn said, we're still not set in stone on what the industry collaboration is going to be. To hear it's less than probably will be less than 50% is, I'm sure, music to many ears. I put 30, it could be 30, could be 40, we don't know yet, but that is the range that we're anticipating. So that all projects must have some kind of industry support. Now, industry I use in a very vague term, whether it's a conventional company, whether it's another interested group, whether it's a grower association, co-op, as long as there's other funds coming in. And there is some allowance for a leverage of in-kind, but exact ratios limit that to a degree. So in terms of timeline going forward over the next year, as I mentioned, the end of March, two-pager call for proposal is due. When we collect those, starting immediately after, they'll be going out for independent peer reviews, looking at the technical merit of the project. Does it make sense? Does the budget make sense? Does the market make sense? When we receive back the independent peer reviews, we have an internal science advisory board or science advisory committee that will be looking at that, and that is made up of right now 3 individuals from across the country that are well experienced and very knowledgeable in the bioeconomy space. Mike Say has actually agreed to be on our science advisory board for this next go around. I am also on that review board, but in an ex officio capacity, as well as a member of the AFC Science Division. From the proposal reviews and the peer reviews, we essentially shortlist the number of projects down to a final number that is going to be going forward into the overall cluster submission. So later in the summer, and again, I can't be more specific with dates until they're firmed down a little bit, but full proposals from those shortlisted projects will be required, either again, late spring, early summer. Later in the summer, the full cluster proposal will be submitted. That's my job, but with support from the projects that are proposed to be a part of it. Late winter 2017, early 2018, the cluster would be verified, the proposal verified, and then the new framework would be slated to start April 1st, 2018. So in terms of people within BIC, Sandy Marshall is our executive director. Murray McLaughlin is advisor, former executive director for BIC. Very knowledgeable, but for the bioproducts cluster itself, I would be the main project manager, and the other person that will play a large role is Samantha White, our BIC's controller. Sam, if you want to wave or stand up, just so people know who you are. So she will be handling a lot of the claims process. I know there's been a lot of questions around that. BIC itself manages the cluster funding and distribution. The science advisory board members would also act as additional resource to the projects if it is required. There's requirement for regular financial and technical reporting from the projects to BIC, but as Lynn said, the exact form of that is yet to be determined. So my next point about semi-annual progress updates from myself to AFC, we'll see if that maintains or if that changes. And then there's events like today where there's an annual meeting.